History doesn't repeat itself with armies at first. It starts with words. When a U.S. president says a foreign land is a necessity, when Europe moves troops north, and when the Arctic becomes a military map again, that's when history stops whispering. For centuries, the world has made the same mistake again and again. When powerful nations look at remote, cold, sparsely populated land that is far from the centers of power, they often describe it with one dangerous word: empty. Empty of people. Empty of history. Empty of consequence. Greenland has never been empty, but it has repeatedly been treated as if it were. Today, Greenland has returned to the center of global attention, not because its people demanded it, but because great powers once again see strategic value beneath the ice. And when that happens, history tells us to pay attention. Because whenever powerful nations start talking about necessity, security, and strategic assets, the story usually ends the same way. This is not just a story about Greenland. This is a story about empire, old logic, new language, and the uncomfortable truth that history doesn't disappear. It waits. This is ugly history revisited. Empires have always depended on a lie. That lie is simple. If land looks empty, it must belong to no one. Greenland was not discovered, because Greenland has never been empty. Long before flags, treaties, or international law, Greenland was home. The Inuit communities lived, hunted, traveled, and survived on the island for thousands of years. Their survival depended on intimate knowledge of ice, sea, animals, and seasons. Around the year 986, Norse settlers arrived from Iceland, led by Eric the Red. They named the land Greenland, a marketing choice meant to attract settlers, not a description of reality. The Norse colonies survived for centuries before disappearing, likely due to climate shifts, isolation, and changing trade routes. What remains important is this: Greenland's early history is not one of conquest, but of adaptation and endurance. That would change. In the 18th century, Denmark asserted control over Greenland. After the Napoleonic Wars, Denmark retained Greenland as part of the Danish crown. Like many colonial arrangements, governance came from far away. Decisions about Greenland were made in Copenhagen, not Nuuk. By the 20th century, Greenland had become a Danish colony in practice and in law. In 1953, Greenland's status changed. It was formally incorporated into the Kingdom of Denmark, ending its colonial designation, but not eliminating the power imbalance. The people of Greenland gained more rights over time, but true self-determination remained limited. That tension, between autonomy and external control, would become central to Greenland's modern story. Greenland entered global geopolitics not through its own actions, but through war elsewhere. In 1940, Nazi Germany occupied Denmark. Greenland was cut off from its governing state. Greenland was suddenly vulnerable, not because it was weak, but because it was valuable. The United States stepped in. The United States was concerned that Germany might use Greenland as a base for Atlantic operations or weather monitoring. American forces assumed responsibility for Greenland's defense. The justification was protection. This moment matters. It was the first time the United States treated Greenland not as a distant land under Danish control, but as a strategic military asset. U.S. bases were built. Infrastructure expanded. Greenland became part of the broader war machine, without being consulted. When the war ended, Greenland was returned to Danish administration. The U.S. left. The precedent had been set. But the idea did not. Greenland mattered. During the Cold War, Greenland's value multiplied. Its location, between North America and the Soviet Union, made it ideal for early warning systems, radar installations, and missile detection. The United States established what is now known as Patuxent Space Base, formerly Thule Air Base, in northwest Greenland. This base became a cornerstone of U.S. and NATO missile defense. Greenland was no longer peripheral. It was essential. And essential places are rarely left alone. In 1979, Greenland gained home rule. In 2009, it gained expanded self-government. These were real steps forward. Greenland gained control over its internal affairs, resources, and governance. Its people gained a stronger voice. But Denmark retains control over foreign policy, defense, monetary matters, international treaties. Legally, Greenland remains part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Autonomous, but not independent. And in geopolitics, ambiguity invites attention. In 2019, Donald Trump said something many laughed at. He wanted to buy Greenland. At the time, the idea was widely dismissed as unrealistic. The reaction was disbelief. Jokes. Headlines. But history does not laugh. History has a habit of making dismissed ideas return, louder. By the mid-2020s, Trump's language hardened. He described U.S. control of Greenland as a national security necessity. The language matters. Necessity is the word empires use when they want to remove debate. Trump's reasoning centers on three arguments. First, security. Greenland's location is critical for missile defense and Arctic control. Second, resources. Greenland holds rare earth minerals, uranium, and other materials vital to modern technology and defense systems. Third, competition. Trump frames global politics as a zero-sum contest. If the U.S. does not control Greenland, rivals might. Trump did not rule out force. That sentence alone sent shockwaves through Europe. Because when a sitting U.S. president talks about acquiring allied territory by necessity, the rules of the post-war world start to tremble. This is not diplomatic language. It is imperial language. Under modern international law, sovereign territory cannot be bought without consent. Territories with self-governing populations cannot be transferred like property. Annexation by force is illegal. Greenland is not land without people. It is not land without law. Denmark's response to annexation rhetoric has been clear. Greenland is not for sale. Greenland's own government has been equally clear. Cooperation does not mean ownership. Polls consistently show that Greenlanders overwhelmingly oppose becoming part of the United States. They support partnership. They reject takeover. There is another layer to this story. Denmark is a NATO ally. Any attempt by the United States to seize Greenland would mean violating the sovereignty of a NATO member, creating a constitutional and military crisis within the alliance, undermining the very system the U.S. helped build after World War II. Across Europe, alarms sounded. France has increased Arctic research tied to defense readiness. Germany has expanded logistical and surveillance roles. NATO has designated the High North as a priority zone. Canada expanded its Arctic patrols. Nordic countries intensified joint defense planning. This was not about conquest. It was about containment. European leaders understood the danger. Not just Russia, not just China, but instability inside the alliance itself. Greenland's government has been consistent. They want cooperation. They reject ownership. Polls show overwhelming opposition to becoming part of the United States. But history has taught us something uncomfortable. Empires do not always listen. If the United States were to act unilaterally against Greenland, it would violate the sovereignty of Denmark. It would fracture NATO. It would undermine the global order built after World War II. This is why European military support is increasing, not to provoke, but to deter. Because alliances survive on trust, and trust erodes when power speaks louder than law. This story feels familiar because it is. Power identifies value. Value invites justification. Justification precedes pressure. Empires rarely announce themselves as empires. They speak of security, of necessity, of inevitability. And by the time the world reacts, the map has already changed. The ugly truth is not that Greenland matters. The ugly truth is why it matters now. Because the post-World War II promise that borders would not change by force is being tested again, not in secret, but out loud. Greenland has seen this before. Powerful nations arrive. They claim protection. They leave behind precedent. The ice remembers. And history watches. The question is not whether Greenland will remain Greenland. The question is whether the world will recognize the warning signs it has ignored so many times before. Because history does not repeat itself loudly. It repeats itself while everyone is still debating whether it can happen at all. This is Ugly History Revisited.